Want to know who's killing the wilderness? Because most likely it's you.
Do you feel the vibes?
Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I'm your host Namejamie, and today we're going to be talking about why the OSRS PvP community and the wilderness are somewhat dying, why this death is unavoidable, and why specific players are taking certain actions to actually speed up the demise in my opinion. Let's first tackle the PvP system itself to understand this problem. The PvP system in OSRS is somewhat static in its motion and limiting in its capabilities. For a system that was created in 2000, this is to be expected. I think compared to current systems though, or current games that are available with PvP systems, the PvP system is just antique in regards to those games. The system is completely RNG based in the fact that what you hit, which is the basis for all PvP games, is complete RNG in this game. And that's why people who have 2 spec weapons can sometimes 100 to zeros great players just like that. And I'm not saying that PvP has no skill and it's all RNG. I understand that tri-birding and switching takes tremendous skill, and that people who are good at those things can increase their winning or their KDA to like 100 and 0. I understand that. So I'm not saying that PvP itself doesn't have skill. I'm just saying that these heavy RNG systems decrease the replayability of PvP on old school in general. And I think that's why even people who like PvP will admit that every few years the PvP system begins to feel boring even to you. And I think that's the same for all systems, including PVM, but I just think there's more variety in what you can kill in PVM, whereas in PvP, you're just killing the same people over and over, especially within a small community. I can see how that becomes frustrating. And I think that's the basis for why people begin to say that PvP is dead every few years, because as these PvPers who've been PvPing full-time for a year and a half begin to quit off or stop PvPing because it's just boring at that point, the community shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, and the fights become limited and limited and limited, and the mechanics are static and static and static, and so forth. And because of this, I think that's why we see these posts every few years. Now, the main thing I want to talk about today is Jagex's updates that combat this problem, and their so-called solutions, and why they're really not solutions, and why I think they're actually bad for the game. First, let's tackle the first update, which was the Rejuvenation 1 update. The Rejuvenation 1 update included some resource areas, 3 mini-bosses, and 3 main bosses. For the sake of the argument here, I'm just going to be talking about the 3 main bosses, as it is what pertains to what I'm talking about today. So, the 3 main bosses weren't implemented so bad. You have Vedion, the sword guy, you have Callisto the bear, and you have whatever the spider's called. So, all these bosses had high barriers of entry, right? You either had to have high combat stats, high range stats, or you had to have decent gear like Varrox, right, to kill bosses like Callisto. So, these bosses were put in the wilderness, and because they were put in the wilderness, Jagex had to incentivize PVMers to go there over other PVM content, because PVM content put in the wilderness comes with the hindering of being PvP'd. So, to account for this, you have to artificially increase the loot table of these bosses to make it worth. And how they did this was increased by putting in the pets, which was pretty cool for the time, and they had really good loot for the time. So, these bosses had good rewards comparable to their requirements. The problem is that later down the line, eventually Jagex is going to add PVM content that is better than this PVM content. And because it's better, the hindering that we talked about earlier, the inherent PvP that is going to take place in the wilderness, it is going to automatically make this PVM content irrelevant, because as soon as people can find a better PVM content, PVMers like to PVM. They don't like to PvP. So as soon as they find better PVM content, they're going to leave, and this content is going to become ancient, especially when the new PVM content devalues the current loot table, right? The special drops like the rings. When they add better rings to the games, this content becomes even more irrelevant. So what happens here, right? Because this update was added, I think, a year and a half ago, or maybe a year ago, right? So what happens now is that you get these same complaints that PVM is dying, that the wilderness is dying. So what does Jagex have to do? They have to do another rejuvenation update, and this update came in the form of revenants. Now, do you begin to see the cycle here that you have to increase the loot tables to make it worth it, and as soon as a new monster comes out that's a little bit better, all of a sudden this content's irrelevant and the complaints come back and a new monster has to come out in the wilderness, and we're starting to begin a vicious cycle, I think. So to prove this point, let's talk about the revenants specifically. The revenants, unlike the three main bosses in Rejuvenation 1, really don't have any good requirements. I think all you need is 85 range and good wealth, and not even good gear. You just need wealthier gear, and you can kill any of these monsters really, and because they can't hit you because of the bracelet, so you're making mils per hour, maybe a mil and a half an hour if you have lower, like 85 range. If you can find an open world, you're making a mil and a half an hour for no requirements. It's insane to me, because let's be honest here, 85 range is nothing in today's world. That is not a requirement, that is not a barrier. Because the game has been out a couple years, I would go out and gander that at least 90% of the player base has 90 plus range on one of their accounts. With that being said though, let's simplify this issue down to its core, which is that Jagex either continues to do these updates, or to make PvP not boring, they rebalance or rework the PvP system. Now, with the past with Jagex and reworking the PvP system, aka EOC, no one in their right mind would give Jagex that power again to rework the game like that. And with the current polling system in the game, even if they were to try, I think it would never pass. So, with that being said, I came up with my own solution, and this is going to be a message strictly for PvPers. And if you want the wilderness to survive, stop doing this. And what I mean by stop doing this is stop overfishing. Now, you're probably like, what the heck are you talking about, Namejamie? What does fishing have to do with PvP? And this is somewhat of a parallel that I'm going to draw to a real life situation. And overfishing in the real world is when fishermen who fish for a job, left to their own devices, will do what's advantageous for them. And what is advantageous for a fisherman? Well, it's to fish all the time and to fish as many fish as they possibly can gather. And while it's not a problem on an individual level, when a collective starts doing that, we start to see problems arising, because you start killing off the population which everyone must use to fish. So, this is eerily similar to what's happening in the Rev Caves. Too many people are PvPing, and the PVMers aren't having fun, and it's killing them off, right? So, understand that I understand that people will say, "Oh, Namejamie, it's the wilderness. If you go in the wilderness, you're gonna die." I understand that argument, and yeah, it's a little brain numbing, but I understand it, and honestly, I accept it. But the problem becomes that when everyone is doing these things, it becomes extreme, and simple ideas acted upon in the extreme are often unhealthy for a game or an individual even. So my advice to fix this for Jagex was to implement an update that would fix the system around PvPing, and especially PvPing in the higher wilderness levels, like 30 plus, where it becomes multi. And this implementation would be that if you kill an individual, you cannot kill that same individual for another 24 hours. Now wait, before you spam the comments with how dumb of an idea this is, I have also added some sub rules that would add to this rule that would fix a lot of the issues that are implemented with this rule. So to one of the sub rules that would be implemented to fix this would be that the only person that couldn't kill you would be the person who landed the finishing blow on you, right? So that way that you couldn't just have a single person kill you and then no one could kill you for 24 hours. It would just be the single person who killed you. On top of this would only be implemented in 30 plus wilderness, where most of the multi-PKing happens anyways. And this would mainly be focused at the rejuvenation updates. So the regular PvPers who just PvP actually other PvPers that happen right outside the wilderness wouldn't be affected at all, like right outside the wilderness line. Another rule would be that this wouldn't be applied to PvP worlds. That would be obvious. And on top of that, the mechanic will be void if the person that killed you was you attack them. This mechanic will be void entirely, and they can attack you again even within those 24 hours. Because I don't know how many times a team has relogged the same world on me within not a day, but within 2 hours to kill me over and over and over and over again. And it's just, as I said, not fun. And you're killing the rev caves. And I understand that you don't know what's in my inventory. So every time you kill me, there's a chance that I'll have, I don't know, 100 million worth of loot in my inventory. But it's just not realistic. And what's happening is that I'm being killed so much, you're killing me for 40k. The goddamn runes you used to kill me cost more than the loot you're getting from me. It's insane. So that's what I would implement to the system. And obviously you could add a ton of rules to this system to really make it efficient, really make it balanced. But this was just a baseline idea. Anyways, enough ranting for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I gotta get off. It's my sister's birthday, so happy birthday to her. We're gonna go out to eat. If you liked today's video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts on the topic down below. This is a discussion, so I often look in the comment section. I will definitely reply if you leave something. With that being said, I'd love to hear your guys' ideas, and peace.